you were already in agitated or hyped up state, just leaving from home. And then you get up there and you're still kind of that way. And obviously, if you would have stepped back and looked detached, yes.
Yeah.
Things
I feel like that could be one of those
in
miracles.
The moment, it was one of those miracles. And so another one that I saw that day in his house was he had a notebook on the kitchen table, and I just opened it to a page. And the first page that I opened it to, the only thing that was written on it was this: I will never accept defeat.
Wow.
And I brought that paper and made a copy of it and blew it up and hung it in his room, also in his handwriting. And
that's the handwriting right there.
That's Shane's handwriting.
We're gonna make a shirt.
With this.
It's gonna be IronWill.
That would
and
be
it's gonna
awesome.
say, let's do it.
Yeah.
We're gonna make a shirt.
That's awesome. So that's another thing from that day. So we go in and I said, you know what, this is pretty overwhelming, but we'll have to come back to it, clean this house out and that. And then his brother and sisters said, you know what, you guys have got too much. We'll do it. And they cleaned that house out.
They stepped in.
Everything up. Every time that they could, they felt like they wanted to help. And sometimes they're just not.
I'm sure that's the hardest part, is finding out what would be the most helpful.
What you can do to help.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And so another thing from that time, Shane got hurt on the 15th. His brother's birthday is on the 16th, and Shane's birthday is on the 17th. So on the 16th, we'd been at the hospital, and should we go ahead and have Dustin's birthday? What should we do? Everybody feels so bad.
And I remember my brother was planning like a big birthday party, and I was going to celebrate also with him. Yeah.
Right.
But he was going to have like pizzas and stuff like that. But yeah.
So then Dustin called me and he said, what do you think? Should we go ahead? Is it bad? What should we do? And I said, you know what? Let's just go ahead. The grandkids and all of us, we need to feel as normal as we can, even though we're not in a normal state. And I'm so glad we did. And Shane and I talked about this the other day. The pictures of all of us at that birthday party, you look at the eyes of everybody.
You could tell something was going on.
The burden or the care in every eye. And I love those pictures, but I hate them. I do like them because it just shows that we're human and you have feelings, and you don't want to hide them. You don't want to bury them. They're there. And it was good to have all of us together, the support and that. And the next day I was back up to the hospital with Shane for his birthday, So those are some things that I remember that were awesome and touching, and I wouldn't trade for anything. Even though it's a terrible thing, you find the good. And that's another thing that I always say is look for the good. You got to find the good in everything. And Shane has said, and I've said, and I think everybody who's gone through anything hard has said, I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
Yeah,
if I had if I went back in time, I wouldn't do this again. But also I wouldn't trade what I've learned.
But I'm glad it happened in a way.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily glad of the outcome or whatever, but I'm glad I got the opportunity to learn those lessons.
You've grown a lot. We all have. And I think also part of it is, okay, this is IronWill podcast and all of you that have been on it and so many more people out there are amazing what you have to fight through, what you're fighting through. But your world involves a lot of people. Yeah. And even though we didn't go through it, we were on your coattails and we were watching and cheering for you.
And you suffered through it.
And it takes its toll and whatever, but it's not us doing the hard things, but
not the physical hard things, but
there are other hard things.
The mental hard things
That's
is
true.
almost harder. Yeah.
It's true. And as a parent, you've said, or I've said, and I'm sure you've probably said, I wish I could take this from my son, do it for him,
sure.
But we're learning from him, and we all have a thing that says, I have a headache today. I mean, this is one example, I guess, but I can't complain because look what Shane's doing. It's always, we all had to kind of suck it up and quit being babies and fight a little harder. But we did, another one I was thinking of is Christmas. Christmas came, and you don't remember Christmas because you were sedated for that too. But Keith and I were there Christmas morning with him, and he's in a coma. What they call
medically induced coma.
Yeah.
So, we're talking to him and whatnot, but he's out of it. And then he lifts up his right arm straight up in the air. His right arm, his whole right side hasn't moved since the accident.
Wow.
They'll poke him with pins, pinch him with the hemostats. No,
I can't feel
anything. His arm lifts straight up in the air, and then he puts it down. And I looked at Keith, and he looked at me, and we're like, what are we hallucinating? And then he did it again. He did it 2 more times.
Wow.
And to me, that was my little Christmas miracle, saying, yes, his arm and hands and legs or whatever are going to work again.
Going to work, yeah.
And, I always believe, and I still believe, that he may not get 100%, but I think his hands will get better also. I really still do. His fingers and thumb are the things that are the worst, that are still, I mean, there's obviously the walking. He can walk. He can't maybe run like he wants to. He can do a lot of things.
And surfaces make it harder to walk.
Grass or uneven surfaces. He likes to be outside. He likes to go hiking, and we go places and we do what we can, and he does it himself, but he gets to a place a lot of times where he doesn't feel safe. And I know he doesn't want to hold on to our arms and go, but we can help him. We will help him as needed, but he just gets to a point where, I can't go any farther, but this is how far I went today.
Yeah.
So, when some places are sandy or gravelly, or I don't even feel good on a lot of them. So, but at that point on that Sunday or that Christmas day, that just boosted my hope.
Yeah.
I had hope, but that just gave me another boost. And then one more thing, and I don't know how much time we've used up, but one other thing.
You're doing great.
Yeah.
One other thing I remember is I said that the 17th after his surgery, when I came back, that was my worst, lowest point. So the 18th, the next morning we get to the hospital, his room was quite dark. The shades are drawn. The lights are really dim, and it's cold in there.
Right.
And I was tied down to the bed.
And he was tied down.
Yeah.
And they had put a probe in his brain, to his head, to monitor the pressure during the surgery the night before. So they had a monitor above his headboard that told the pressure of his brain, and the doctors told us, this is, if it gets above this, that's bad. If it gets above this, it's really bad. And right now he's at, I don't even remember what it was, and that's pretty good. So we're keeping it cool. We're keeping it quiet. If you talk in a whisper. So Keith and I came in. We didn't really say anything, but then just said something to each other, maybe just in a whisper, like, oh, he looks good today, or he looks better, whatever. And his pressure goes up. That little whisper.
Wow.
And so we just, quieted right down. We went out in the hall, and I think we had kind of planned this on the way up, but Keith asked his brother and one of Shane's cousins to come and give him a blessing. So they came, and I was pretty worried, they're going to come in and they're going to give him a blessing. And us just whispering, that pressure went way up. So there's Keith and I and Shane, of course, and then David and Doug in the room, 4 of us and Shane. And David gave the blessing. And David is a quiet, soft-spoken person. And the first thing that struck me was how powerful and commanding his voice was while he gave the blessing.
Interesting, yeah.
And he talked right to Shane. Shane's in a coma, but, I don't know. You don't remember it.
No.
But I know your brain heard it.
Yeah.
And I kept my eyes open the whole time. And I stared at that monitor.
Yeah.
And it never moved.
Wow.
It never varied. And it was a beautiful, I wish I could remember it. I just remember it being a really nice message of, you have a lot to give to the world, and
He does, and he's doing it.
You'll pull through this, and you'll be strong. You're a strong person, and those are the things I remember. But the other thing I remember is my eyes were open. I was staring at the thing. I was looking at Shane's and his arm. It was like it was wavy, like swimming, almost like pulsing. I don't know how to even describe it. And that just was weird to me, you know.
Well, especially because the levels didn't move.
Nothing moved.
Yeah, nothing changed.
So your arm wasn't moving. It was just a hallucination, a vision. I don't know what. It was a sign to me.
Mm-hmm.
It was a sign to me that Shane's arm and hand will be better, will
That's awesome.
progress and whatnot. So anyway, the prayer's over. We get done and we went on the hall to tell them goodbye. And I said to Keith, "Did you see Shane's arm? Did you see what Shane's arm was doing?" He goes, "My eyes were closed. What did I see?" I'm like, "Oh, my eyes weren't closed. I kept my eyes open the whole time."
Yeah.
But the feeling of peace after that to me was it was such a night and day. The night before was the worst, the lowest.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that moment that the blessing ended, just peace.
Yeah.
You know, of course you're concerned and that, but the dread and the fear and the things like that were gone.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
So then it was just concentrating on.
So it was as much for him as it was for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So that was really awesome and wish you could have heard it. I know you felt it.
One thing that you always say about my injury and stuff, you say you only prayed to God to give me the opportunity to fix myself, basically.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I always pray for Shane. I've always prayed for all my kids. But I never, Shane's had a lot of trials and brought on by himself, a lot of them in his life. And I don't ever feel good about saying, fix Shane, basically.
Yeah.
You know, I always pray for him to have a chance to meet the right people, to get in to have the opportunity. And I felt like those prayers are certainly answered in every aspect of this. The hospital you went to, the doctors you got, the nurses you got. You talked about an aide that stayed up all night with you talking, just someone to talk to, feeding him ice, and just to be there. Yep. So many people, so many of those therapists that were just awesome people. One of the therapists, Shane, he would ask Shane, "Can you do 10 more?" And he'd say, "Yeah, let's do 20 more," or whatever. You know, Shane was always pushing it. I had a little journal in the room. Whenever anybody would visit, I'd have them ask him if they would like to write a message to Shane. So then when he left the hospital, I asked the therapist if they'd like to, write to Shane as he left. And they each did. And this one, Alex was his name. He said, what does he say right here? He said, right here. A patient, as a therapist, you hope to work with a patient that allows you to push them to work harder to succeed. Rare is the patient that pushes the therapist to work harder to get them to succeed. You are just such a person, and it's been my immense pleasure to get to know you. And he went on just to thank him.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Because I think
that is awesome to be able to look back at those messages and
remember.
Yeah, she wrote about the blessing and that kind of stuff, and like especially the stuff that I can't remember for myself. It's helpful.
Right.
Yeah. So helpful.
Yeah. So it's a journey, and it's a learning. Life's a journey, and how much we all learned. And you're still learning, and you're still kicking butt, and still trying to.
He's still punching.
Still trying to be positive. That's right. Be positive, and I felt through the whole thing that not that you were selfish or self-centered, but you've grown outwardly, reaching out more for people. He was always around people. He was always friends to people. He was always a good, good friend and like that, and a positive. If someone was running a race with him, he's not going to let him beat him. No. He's going to do everything. Right. He's going to drop over dead before he lets someone else win.
Right.
So, but the growth that I've seen, and part of it's probably age. I don't know. But, you were 26, so you should have been grown up by then.
Yeah, I should have been, but.
But the growth, the maturity, and then the empathy that you've learned, and you remember how you felt, in the hospital or whatever. And there's people that are there right now. And when you were there and when you were starting to recover, you would search out people what do I